This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, John Rauta back with episode 103 of A Geek Leader podcast. And today on the show we've got Captain John Havlik. He is a retired Navy SEAL captain. He co-authored a book with Bill Treasure called The Leadership Killer. And prior to him getting into the SEALs, he was a swimming coach. He also qualified for the Olympic swimming team. Has lots of good stuff. When we go back and talk about his swimming days, we talk about his Navy SEAL days, how he got into the SEALs. We talk about his idea of ego issues, keeping ego in check, how to make things happen. We talk a little bit about 360 reviews. We talk about how to find someone to keep you in check, which was his Master Chief. Lots of good stories here. Really enjoyed the interview, and I want to go ahead and thank Captain John Havlik for his service to our country. With all that being said, give it up for John Havlik.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you having me today.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited to talk to you. I always love talking to veterans and getting some of the things that you guys have to offer and some of the skills that you've learned. And I want to start out just by saying thank you for your service and thank you for all that you've done to help protect our country. And I want to answer one question that we kind of talked about before the show and a little bit on your email. You were kind of curious of why a tech or geek leader might be interested in reaching out to a non-techie. But I think the parallels that I draw between technology and even military service is pretty great. I know you guys on a much larger scale are working to defend our country and keep us safe. And a lot of us in technology, we're actually in cybersecurity or in development, and we're also working to keep our company safe. You know, it's a much smaller scale, but there's a lot of parallels there. And leadership, I feel, can be learned and can be earned, and it's one of those things that you can learn from any person as long as you listen and you humble yourself. And it's one of the things that I'm just curious about from your experience.
Well, like I said, you're welcome. My service, I love doing it, and I miss it. I've been retired 4 years, and I miss every minute of it. So wish I could go back, but I did my fill. Yes, I was curious about why you would want to interview me. Especially, I would lose all credibility with your listeners if they saw me trying to set up and the whole computer Skype situation. So I'm glad they didn't see that. But yeah, I think you can lead in. Anybody can lead in any field, and even in the SEALs where, we're designated warriors, technology has really come into the battlefield and made things, a lot easier for us. And so we've had to get smart on that. So,
yeah. So if you don't mind telling the audience a little bit about your background and kind of what made you join the Navy and then get into the SEALs and what you're doing today.
Well, I grew up, I grew up an Army brat, and so I was born in Germany when my father was stationed over there, and then we came back to the States when he was done, and he retired in Maryland and decided to work over in Washington, and we just settled in Baltimore, and I just grew up there outside of Baltimore near the airport, and grew up and just was a regular kid, big sports junkie, and tried everything, and swimming, lacrosse, baseball, and got into swimming, kind of made that my passion, and got me a scholarship to go to West Virginia University. And so I decided to go there, and I did my 4 years and did pretty well and got my degree. I always state that I graduated. I was a student athlete, although at times I felt it was the other way around. And graduated with a degree in accounting, but I did not see that me doing the accounting route as a lifestyle. So I decided to go into coaching, and I did that for a couple of years. And I was looking for a job, and the Navy swim coach, I saw him at a national meet, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking for a job." And he goes, "Well, funny you should say that, because I'm looking to hire an assistant at the academy, and would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, don't say yes first. Let me finish the details. I'll call you." And so he called me a couple of weeks later and said, "Hey, what are you thinking? And then do you want to come coach at the Naval Academy? And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, first off, there's a catch. And I said, what's that? And he goes, you have to join the Navy. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah, you got to go to boot camp and, do your 8 weeks there. And then once you're done, you come up and you'll coach at the academy. So what it was really the academy's way of hiring, not going the civilian route, but going a military route to get assistant coaches. And I was one of 9 assistants in 9 different sports that was eventually had to go through boot camp, like I said, and went up to the academy and coached. And so I was doing that and thought that was my career. And about halfway through, I met a SEAL who was working at the academy, and he started, showing me the videos and pumping me with the books. And he became a very good friend of mine, and is still to the day. And he just said, well, why don't you try this? So I was coaching at the Naval Academy where the Navy was grooming their future leaders. And I said, well, if I can coach these guys and gals and I'm just as good as them, why not go for the commissioning route? So I decided to pursue my naval commission via officer candidate school with a guarantee to go to SEAL training upon my commissioning. And that's what I did. And I never thought I'd make it a career. I just thought I would have a good time and enjoy it. But I enjoyed the Navy and everything I did, and ended up doing 31 years and retired in 2014. And now took about a year to transition, took some time off, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so now somehow I've gotten into this public speaking, motivational speaking area of the world. And then last year I had the great honor to co-author a book with a good friend of mine from West Virginia. And so that's what I'm doing now. Now we're pushing the book and doing some more speaking, and going to see what's next. So,
well, let's talk a little bit about how you and Bill got back together, because you guys were friends a long time ago, but you had a big gap in between. I think the story is really interesting of how you guys met back up and got together to collaborate with this book.
Yeah, Bill was a freshman at West Virginia. He was a diver, and I had just graduated, so I had an extra semester to finish my degree. And so I coached, and so I met Bill, and swimmers, divers usually don't mesh too well, but he was a good guy, and I loved the divers because they were good guys. Most of our divers were great, and they scored points for us, so that they helped us win. So you had to be good friends with them. So I made good friends. Like I said, I knew him for about a year, and then I graduated and went off, and then Bill did his thing. So yeah, we reunited back in 2015. So that it was almost 35 years, since we had last talked or seen each other, and it was at a swim team reunion at a football game, and I had breakfast with him one morning, and I was interested in the motivational speaking part of the house, and he had eventually started his own company, Giant Leap Consulting, in Asheville, North Carolina. And so I said, so what do you do? And he goes, well, I bring people in. I teach courageous leadership, and I also bring in speakers from the outside to share stories and kind of break up the monotony of a 2-day seminar where it's just not Bill talking, and let them share their stories on leadership. And I said, well, I can do that for you. So he brings me in. He's brought me in every now and then, and I've had a great opportunity to talk to some really great businesses and groups. And one day we kept talking between ourselves and reading articles or seeing articles almost on a daily basis about just good leaders doing stupid things and things they knew better, and Bill said, well, I'm looking about writing another book, and he had written 4 previous books, and so he said, would you like to co-author my 5th book? And I said, absolutely. So one thing led to another, and we came out with a big grandiose idea of leadership, but eventually whittled down to the one topic that we address in the book of what we call the leadership killer, and that's hubris and huge self-ego. So that's kind of the story behind Bill and I and how the book came about.
Awesome. How would you define hubris, and especially how it relates to leadership?
Well, the book says it's excessive pride or self-confidence But when I look at it, I just, the hubristic leaders I've worked with or met, it's usually just a super ego and this sense of I'm self-important and I'm above the unit and the people in it. A huge, very pompous, very arrogant.
Yeah, we don't have any leaders like that around here.
I don't know of any currently.
Yeah.
No, so, but I, and usually when you read about a good leader doing something wrong, they know better, and especially when I used to see in the military that it would just like, sleeping with a subordinate or everybody knows you can't do that. And they teach you that in leadership school. The Navy does a very good job of training you before you take over a unit, what you can and can't do. But still, the trends still show that people do things that they shouldn't be doing and know better. And you just wonder why you do it. And it just kind of comes back to the fact to me that it's hubris and the belief that you won't get caught or no one will tell on you.
Yeah, I definitely see that, and it's easy to fall into that trap. I know, being a leader myself, sometimes when things get in a roll and you start getting things right and people start praising you and you start getting that, swell of confidence, sometimes your ego does grow along with that, which is really hard to suppress. What are some tips that you have to keep that ego in check?
Well, I think the big thing for me was, my big hubristic check was, I'll just say chapters 5 and 6 in the book, and that's my story. But I started off very cocky in the SEALs and everything, and I thought I was very confident and I knew it all. And I kind of got bit in the butt on that, and it humbled me, and had to get out for a while, but came back in and recovered, but learned from that humbling experience to just become a better leader. So usually something you do will put you in a position where you're going to learn or humble yourself. But the other thing I think was really good with us in the Navy was we had, especially as you moved up into the leadership positions of commanding officer, executive officer, we had a position called a senior enlisted advisor or the command master chief, and he was your senior enlisted person in the command, and he was like the buffer between you and the command, and he kind of knew what was happening on the deck plates and knew what the troops were talking about and how they felt. And he also knew your policies. And so he was kind of the go-between that could really help, the message get across both up and down the chain of command, and make sure everybody was on the same sheet of music and focused. And so I think that was the biggest check, is having a check. And I talk about that in the book, is find yourself a check that you trust and who's honest and will give you honest feedback. And not always the feedback you want to hear too. You have to be open-minded to that. And then I think that's the biggest thing for me, was just having somebody kind of call me out when I needed it. And so
is that kind of like the normal role of a master chief, is to be that guy that isn't, has served his time, has been around, and can, really share his experience with the XO?
Yeah, I used to make it a point, and I saw the best commands that I worked with was we call it the triad, the leadership triad. The CEO, the XO, and the command master chief, or the senior enlisted advisor, and they all they all sang one message, and but the way you did it was the way I did it was, I sat down with the XO and the master chief in the morning, and we closed the door and we just talked about things and talked about the command and where we're going, what we're going to want to do and what we've done, and are we doing the right thing. But it was important that we all kind of gave our both sides, and then we talked, guy to guy, man to man, and threw the rank and titles out the window and just talked man to man, and then. But when we were done, it was important that we talked as one voice. And so when we opened the door in front of the troops or the command, we were one voice and one unit. So that led to no confusion. And, that, hey, here's the CEO saying one thing, the XO is behind him saying something else. And then, oh, yeah, the master chief is doing saying something else. But yeah, that Master Chief is real important because he knows the pulse of the command and what the troops or the sailors are thinking.
Yeah. Do you have any stories or times where the Master Chief kind of kept you in check and maybe saved you from making a big mistake or going down the wrong path?
I don't know. I have any specific stories. They were always like, I would start getting visions of grandeur, and the Master Chief would go, "Hey, Captain, I don't think so," but I do remember one. Yes, one Master Chief. I was a brand new ensign, just about a year into the SEAL teams, and I was out on a Friday afternoon with my buddy of mine, and had a couple toddies, and we're talking, and my buddy started to leave, and as we were walking out, two Master Chiefs. One of them was the Master Chief for SEAL Team 3, and I was at SEAL Team 1. He was walking in the bar, and he goes, "Where are you going, Ensign?" And I said, "I got to go home." He goes, "No, come back in. I'm going to teach you how to become an officer." So I went back in the bar. A couple hours later, two Vietnam veterans, highly decorated, kind of gave me the ropes on how to be an officer in the teams, what to look for, what the good officers did, what the bad officers did, and was probably probably the best lesson learned I ever had of, especially so young in my career, of what to expect and how to act once I got into key leadership positions. So,
yeah, that's an invaluable lesson, I would imagine. Just having someone that's not afraid to, tell someone that outranks them, here's the things that work, here's the things that don't work, and just to, for you to be open to that knowledge and that experience.
Well, I was probably too young to say no, but I knew those guys carried a lot of weight, and they carried a lot of weight throughout the community, and so you don't want to piss those guys off, and they want to make you look good, and so it was very important that those Master Chiefs, they're seasoned and they're experienced, and you quickly learn in BUDS that in SEAL training that you have to rely on your troops and the men, and then really the chiefs in the Navy. It's well known throughout the Navy that the chiefs are the backbone of the Navy. They have the experience, they have the expertise, and so their job really in the Navy is to groom young junior officers to become good senior officers, and so hopefully I was smart enough to realize that. I didn't listen to everything, but I tried to incorporate their recommendations and their thoughts and their experience as I shaped my leadership.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to that. I had a story very similar when I was my first time managing a web development team. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was a pretty bad leader, and I always had these, like you said, visions of grandeur, just, we can do this, we can do that. And luckily I had a guy on my team who had been in technology for over 20 years. And a lot of times after our meetings and after everybody left, he would say, "Hey, can I stick around? I got something to share with you." And I said, "Sure." And he would always say, "Hey, I know you want to do this. Let me explain to you what's going to happen when you go down that path and let you rethink that." And it was invaluable for me to kind of learn some of the lessons without having to, go through the failures.
Yeah, you're foolish if you don't, and then if you ignore them, then you're opening yourself up to just be a bad leader, and do things the wrong way. And like I said, your reputation starts preceding you wherever you're going. If you're somebody that just bucks the leadership, it gets around quickly, and you don't get many opportunities that you're really looking for. So those guys are invaluable. They were great people and some great friends, but great mentors too.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any stories of like a great example of a leader that you maybe served under that was very humble and was able to kind of show you some traits and some characteristics that you were able to kind of take through your career?
I worked with some good and bad ones. It's funny that probably the easiest guy I ever worked for, and the one I did best was I was on a 3-star admiral staff, my first real staff job, and so I was the only SEAL. I was kind of his special operations advisor, but I worked for this Captain '06 surface warfare officer, Navy guy, and SEALs and surface warfare officers don't get along very well, and we call them SWOs. They're just different people. Ship drivers are different people, and so the ones I've worked with had in previous experience, they just weren't good people. My 2 cents. But I end up working for this guy, and he was just a little short guy, but I went in for my indoctrination when I checked on board, and he looked at me and he says, "Coach, I don't care how much you swim, how much you work out, how much you jump out of a perfectly good airplane or dive. When I tell you to do something, I expect quality work, and I want it on time. Is that understandable?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And we had a perfect relationship because he had high expectations, but he kind of allowed me to grow and do what I wanted. And if I didn't give him quality work, then he let me know professionally. But that was one of the easiest guys I've ever worked for. So yeah, I think it's just people that allow you. I worked best for guys that just gave me some guidance and then let me go and didn't micromanage me and berate me if I didn't do it the way they wanted to do it. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I've had managers in both sense where, the ones that do micromanage you, and you never hear anybody say, yeah, the best boss I ever had always micromanaged me, and they always yelled at me when I messed up, and they never gave me the opportunity to be creative and to try new things,
I just didn't respond to that, and I had a lot of those in the beginning that would tell me something, or they would just say, "Do this, make it happen." I hear this all the time in special operations. Just make it happen, Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you go out there and try to make it happen, and you go up, and the next thing you're getting chewed out for not doing it right or not the right, and you're like, well, I mean, if you give me a little guidance, it'd probably save me a lot of work, and I fought that a lot early on. But luckily we got rid of those guys and I would say, when I came through as a young junior officer, we learned a lot from the Army about their the way they train and develop their officers. And now we have a really good professional development track going and making better officers and smarter officers.
So would you say that the book, The Leadership Killer, is mostly about how to prevent the demise of a good leader and how to keep their ego in check and their humility there? Or would you say it's more about developing and growing, but keeping yourself in that lane of humility?
Well, I like to think of the book as we bring out a lot of examples of leaders that have gone bad, mm-hmm. And we just kind of wonder why do you do that? And we offer up tips, we don't. As I share, Bill shares his story of his humbling experience, mm-hmm. and then I share my chapters where I talk about getting humbled in the Navy and the SEALs, and I think through those stories that just from two different guys, two different perspectives, but we recovered and went on and were successful, so to speak, and however you want to define success. Bill has done well in his consulting business and has very big clients that he works with on a continuous basis. And I, like I said, I got out, I came back in and ended up doing 31 years and retired as a captain, which I never thought I would, and still got great opportunities to lead overseas. And so I think it's just, we try to offer up tips from our experiences and from the folks that we've worked for, both good and bad, and just offer up. I look at the book as a tool that when things are maybe going too well, maybe you should read the book, because it's too perfect. You get a sense of, I told Bill, there's a sense, at least in the military, of you always want to check your back, of not always looking ahead, but you want 360 coverage. And I think when you're successful, you're always looking ahead and you don't look out your flanks or your rear. And that's really where hubris comes in, is waiting to attack you and hit you when you're most vulnerable. I think the book is a great leadership tool to be used by all leaders at all different levels, even from the very beginning to the most successful.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the things that a lot of books don't cover. They don't cover what to do when things are going well, and what to do when it doesn't seem like there's any problems or there's anything that can stop you. And I think that's one of the big problems that we have with leaders is they get overconfident and get a little reckless, I would say.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've been there. I've been able to walk that fine line, and luckily I haven't stepped over it. But I mean, it's natural when things are successful that your ego starts developing and your self-importance and everything. It's even in athletics. I talk to a lot of athletic groups, and what's the fine line between hubris and arrogance? Or is there a fine line? Because as an athlete, you want to win, and you want to go out there and kick ass, so to speak, and but you don't want to be a prick about it either, so, and you guys still got to treat people, like you want to be treated. And so, I say, and Bill and I both agree that you're most vulnerable to hubris when you're most successful.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But you do have to keep some sense of confidence as well. So you're right. It is a balancing act, more or less, because if you're always guessing yourself, you're never going to make progress.
Well, that's why important. It's important you have good core values. And I think my parents were very good with that, and I carried it through. But that's where the tips come in, like what I said earlier about, having a check or somebody close that can call you out when your ego is, when you are getting real pompous or arrogant, and I learned that in swimming and in coaching too. Is you have to walk that fine line, but that comes from internally. If you've got bad upbringing, or you don't have any morals, or you don't have any character, you're just going to keep walking the fine, or you'll cross that line all the time. So,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think having a good stable foundation is very important. One last question for you when it comes to protecting yourself from vulnerability or from becoming too arrogant and moving forward. What are your thoughts on 360 reviews and that kind of perspective gathering?
I'm a big fan of it. I know the Navy instituted that, and you would get them. They were called command climate surveys, and it was usually a snapshot at the time of what the command is thinking. And so there were standard questions, but there were also, if we were small commands, so you could get some personalized questions thrown in there. And I thought the feedback was good. You have to keep an open mind when you ask for feedback, because it's not always positive. And so you take the good with the bad. And I kind of think I think they're good if you keep that open mind, and I kind of look at it as like diving judging or ice skating judging in the Olympics. You throw out the highs and the lows, and then you come up with the median, and that kind of tells you the climate. But if there's some things that really highlight something that you really haven't looked at, even though you may not, you have to keep that in mind that, wow, maybe I need to check this out, or, hey, Master Chief, why don't you look into this, even though it's not what everybody else, the general consensus. So you got to check the extremes out, but usually it's a medium. But a simple answer is I'm in favor of those, but just keep an open mind, because some leaders can't handle negative feedback. Yeah,
sometimes you get that one person that is negative about everything that gets in there that bothers you.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. They say, I forgot what it says, but a happy, I can't remember what about an unhappy sailor or whatever. But yeah, you just can't please everybody. But and then, like we say in the book, I'm not a big Spock. I mean, not a big Trekkie or techie, but. But I think Spock said it well when we put this in the book, that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So
yes,
you'll get that feedback when you do those type of surveys.
Yep, that's absolutely right. So how can people find the book and connect with you and maybe learn more about the Leadership Killer?
Well, you can go to leadershipkiller.com and it'll check out. It's pretty good. Bill and I have a little audio interview that you can do and check out parts of the book. About me, you can go to coachhavlik.com or at Coach Havlik and on Twitter and find out about me. So.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I'm going to link everything up in the show notes at ageekleader.com/Coach Havlik. So you guys can head over there and check out John and all that he's working on, as well as links to the Leadership Killer. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Coach Havlik. And again, you can find out links to his book, to everything that John's doing at ageekleader.com/Coach Havlik. And if you haven't, please head on over and leave a review. Rating and reviews are awesome. Share with your friends, share on Twitter, share on LinkedIn, share on Facebook. If you use that, share wherever you share things with folks. Or just tell people, or just steal their phone, go to the iTunes app, search for Geek Leader and subscribe them, and maybe they'll find it, listen to it, and get some leadership knowledge out of it. It'd be great. So again, thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the show. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much.